And we're live.
Yes, it's Michael Lazio, and we'll call this meeting to order. The Board of Trustees. Teresa, would you take the roll call, please?
Trustee Burgo. Trustee Cook. Trustee Gray.
Here.
Trustee Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Lazio.
Here.
Trustee Lemunion.
Present.
Trustee Pandolfi.
Here.
Trustee Step. Trustee Davis. Trustee Weezy.
Here.
Trustee Wilson. Here. Trustee Wyckoff.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Trustee Burgos here as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you can stand with me for the pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for the invocation, I was going to speak a little bit about Thanksgiving, since Thanksgiving's right around the corner. One of my favorite times of the year. I don't know about everybody else, but we have a lot to be thankful for. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Thanksgiving means. And it really means acknowledging the giver of the gift, not just the gift. And so there's a scripture verse that really kind of clarifies this particular statement. And it's out of James 1:17. It says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. And then again in Psalm 100, says, know fully and recognize with gratitude that the Lord himself is God. It is he who has made us, not we ourselves, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with a song of thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Be thankful to him, bless and praise his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy and loving kindness are everlasting. His faithfulness endures to all generations. And so as we enter into, the season of Thanksgiving next week, I think it's next weekend. Last time I looked, but the thing I love about Thanksgiving is being gathered around the table with all of our family, our friends, and just the conversation, that goes on around those tables is such a great joy to my heart. It was always a great joy growing up as a kid. And so I don't know what your experience is, but I just want to submit that to you. It's like, wow, so there's a lot of things that happen around the table, those conversations around the table. My family is really noisy. Okay. My wife is a one of only child. I'm the oldest of six, and we're Italian. So when she came into my family and experienced her first Thanksgiving, she was totally blown away. And so I don't know if you have those experiences in families, but we're really noisy, but we have a great time, just, great affection for one another. And so if you join me in a word of prayer. Father, we're just so grateful and thankful as we stand here today. Thank you for all these wonderful friends in this room right now as we gather around this circle and this table. But we acknowledge and give thanks to you for all the wonderful blessings that we have in our lives, our families, our friends, and acquaintances, and so many things to be thankful for. Lord, would you have us just be pondering in our hearts those things as we, just celebrate Thanksgiving, but we celebrate the giver of the gift as well. In the Lord's name, amen. Amen. Thank you. So the approval of the agenda. So do we have a motion? For the approval.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Oh, Teresa, we have to,
But I'll do the. Trustee Burgo,
Aye.
trustee Gray,
Aye.
trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Lazio,
aye.
trustee Lemunion,
Aye.
trustee Pandolfi,
Aye.
trustee Step. Trustee Davis. Trustee Weezy,
Aye.
trustee Wilson,
Aye.
trustee Whitehall.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
So we move on to the approval of the consent agenda, and, the approval of the minutes of October 15th. And, so do I have a, motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Michelle, second.
All right, we have a first and a second. So here's that.
Trustee Virgo.
Aye.
Trustee Gray,
Aye.
trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Lazio,
Yes.
trustee Lemunion,
Yes.
trustee Pandolfi,
Aye.
trustee Weezy,
Aye.
trustee Wilson,
Aye.
trustee Whitehall.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So the visitors' comments, we don't have any in-person visitor comments. However, there were several received via email that are included on board docs under visitors' comments. So you can go and read those for yourselves. And so we'll move on to committee reports. So building committee.
Thank you. I think it was last month, I think most of us now know that there are some, at the Colburn Road Library, there has been some road construction on the south of the library, and for whatever reason, we have some blockages, and so some people, I don't know what direction they're coming from to the library. They have to make illegal U-turns. So right now, I just wanted to report that what's happening now is that the library has communicated with the city, and I guess there was, there was a report issued from us to the city on, I think the 30th, is it the 30th of October?
We submitted plans on October 30th.
Okay. And received some information back from the city, I think about 2 weeks later. So our engineer is working with the city response to what we think is an appropriate way to deal with the egress and ingress from the library to Colburn Road. And that, what was in front of us earlier, was we'd have an entrance on the north side of the library, and then we'd have an exit on the southeast side of the library. And that's what our engineer is looking at now to resubmit to the city for approval with the concept, the idea, the hope is that this will be approved fairly quickly, and the actual construction for these two entrances and exits will be done certainly by the time winter actually comes and snow starts falling and so forth. So that's kind of all I know of.
That's our hope.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. That's a hope. Yeah.
I could interject also, there's more construction happening on Colburn. And the library's entered into an agreement with Spire Energy, giving them a temporary easement of the stretch of property in the middle where they can, am I right? Is that right along Colburn Road? Sarah?
Yes, so it'll be on. It's right before. It'll be right in this general area, so. Maybe a temporary easement for Spire to come in. I think they're upgrading the pipes, or they're replacing pipes, or doing something of that nature. So they just need to use our property to store the new pipes, maybe some equipment, whatever they're pulling out of there. They expect to do construction next summer. because they're gonna be doing all the way down Colburn, I think both sides. So the school district says, hey, works best for us, we do it in the summertime. It didn't really matter for us. So we're hoping that they'll be in and out fairly quickly. There shouldn't be any access with the new entrance. There shouldn't be any issues with our access there. Then we are getting $1,000 from Spire to let them use our property for some storage for a couple months. So there's that as well.
Yeah.
This is a temporary easement. Typically, from my experience, your CEO has authority to enter into those types of agreements. But if the board so chooses, we can take a vote tonight to give authority to enter those agreements. To the permanent easements, where you're actually giving away some sort of permanent right to your land. Obviously, the board will see that and take vote on that. But this is a temporary matter that hopefully will be resolved before we in summer.
Yeah, and I think the duration of it is how many months?
I told them 12 months from the day we sign it. So everything will be done up before December of next year. But they have told me the time frame is summertime, so I'm hoping June, July, August.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Just if I could add one more thing.
Yeah.
If you look at the map on the board, the northern boundary is obviously where right now the road has stopped, but I assume there's kind of an agreement with the developer that will continue up on the north side and then back into our property.
So you're talking about the northwest.
Yeah. Yes, right there. Yes, right there.
Yeah, so the developer who owns that portion of the property is going to extend the roadway to allow us to create that entrance as well. And then the actual very east, the southeast portion is not our land technically. It belongs to the city at the moment, and they are going to give us a permanent easement to create that brand new entrance.
Yeah, really.
And all of that's moving parts as we get approvals to the city. Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll know some final decisions on that.
Thank you, Bob. Oh,
This is Lori Lemunion. I have a question. Did you say that we would be responsible for adding that, or will that be paid for by the city?
No, the library will be responsible for all construction.
So
And
of
this-
the new entrance?
Yes, ma'am. So this came from when we did the updates to Colburn Branch. When we got approvals from the city back in 2019, 2020, the library had agreed to do these new entrances when and if development happened to where this new parkway was installed. Now we're 4 years later, the development's happening, the new parkway has been installed, and therefore we have to meet our end of the bargain, which was to create these new entrances.
Thank you. And was that already in our budget?
No, it was not. We do have the funds to cover the cost, but this is not a budgeted item, which once we get a firm idea as to what the true cost of the construction is, we'll come back to the board and ask for authorization.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
To move on to Joycelyn, do you have anything to report on the personnel committee?
Yes, the personnel committee met last Wednesday. We got an update from our HR department, Jennifer, on updating our benefits package.
Joycelyn, we cannot hear you unless you're fading in and out.
Fade it out. Joycelyn, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, but my mic is bad. Yeah, we had an update from Jennifer on benefits for the new coming term. So I don't know if you guys wanted to
Yeah.
summarize that.
Jennifer can just give us a brief overview of what was discussed.
We talked about health insurance for employees, for staff for the plan year 2025 upcoming. We are attempting to manage a significant increase in claims costs. And so what we communicated to the personnel committee was that for 2025, for the first time in 6 years, we are seeing a modest increase in employee contribution to the plan, as well as some small changes to plan design. And then we have the intent through this next plan year to do some training of staff so that we can fully consider the possibility of a qualified high deductible plan within HSA for the 2026 plan year. So we talked about those things. And that presentation, I think, is in board docs attached to tonight's meeting, and that the end is on YouTube, of course. But if anybody has any questions, happy to answer those now or later.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks, Joycelyn. So that had
So, yeah. Well, sure, we can just, let's go in order. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is ad hoc committee. We'll just have Sarah, do you want to
Sure, I leave
address that?
kind of a summary of what's going on.
Yeah,
The ad hoc committee met last Friday. Am I correct on that? Feels like a month ago, but we met last Friday and discussed policy changes, bylaw changes. And I received some directive to bring forward some specific bylaw changes. As I was going through the document, I realized, there's some inconsistencies, there were some redundancies, and I know if, trustee Lewis was here, he would kind of let you know that that's been concern of his. So we have, I had taken the current bylaws and just kind of restructured them. There is a summary attached to board docs that kind of gives you an idea of exactly what the changes look like and what the highlights of those changes. I can, if anyone's had the opportunity to review that, I can answer specific questions. But what we're doing tonight, this is really putting on the board's agenda for a 30-day notice period. And according to the bylaws and state law, we put on for the notice for the board, and then it cannot be voted earlier than the next regular board meeting. So really we have the next 30 days for an in-depth review and comments, and we could go through that discussion in the December board meeting, or if there are questions or comments, we can take those now. But really, we're kind of open on the process.
Do you mind just going over just
Sure.
like a highlight of the significant changes that were recommended?
Sure. First thing is I kind of went over and kind of redid the whole format of the bylaws. I kind of made it consistent with what other bylaws I have seen, but really is with the samples that are out there, that this is what a bylaw should look like. I added, I'm going through the summary here. And really taking, it seems like we were just kind of, everything was kind of sporadic across all the bylaws. So I was trying to get everything fine to one area under the correct heading, and was just clarifying what best I could. One of the major changes, I'm going down this we have a nominating committee that does our president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, but it wasn't defined in our bylaws that committee existed or how it was created. So I created a paragraph that committee exists. This is how it's created. This is what its role and duties are. It clarified that an ex officio member is a non-voting member. We currently have ex officio members on our committees, and currently that person is voting. Typically, an ex officio is not a voting member, but you could make them one, but typically they're not a voting member. In this case, I took it back to best practice, your ex officios do not vote. I included some language about open meetings laws. I removed a few sections because really your bylaws are kind of your governing, constitution, your governing document, and then you would have a rules of procedure that you would adopt to really how you run a meeting. So we had some information in our current bylaws that I pulled out and I'm going to put into a rules of procedure that I'm happy to put on the agenda for next meeting. So you can have both documents side by side and adopt as you feel see fit. Some of those are regarding the visitors, your electronic telephone meetings, consent agenda. Those topics are really more appropriate for your rules of procedure and not your bylaws. As I went through your committees, the way the current bylaws are reading, you created, I would say 4, but I think it's 5 committees. Your bylaws really just need to give an overview of what standing committees are, how they're appointed, what terms are, and then your ability to create ad hoc committees. So what I did, I took out all the specifics about the current committee structure we have and created that we have standing committees, and this is how they're created, and here's their terms. Your actual creating the specific committees would come in your board policy. And the idea really is that your board policy should be easier to amend, to make changes to, and your bylaws really shouldn't be touched ever. Like that should be your standing document, and it'd be a rare occasion to really change what that says. I outlined, I wanted to keep it, so I outlined the duties of the board, I outlined duties of the library director, and I went through state law, pulled out those duties, I pulled out what currently bylaws say, and I pulled out some things that were in policy and really made it very clear what the board's role is and what your library director's role is. And I added a few best practice, what I thought was appropriate for your library director. Obviously, I want you guys to take a hard look at it and make sure that's exactly what you want from your board and what you want from your library director. I also reviewed Aaron's contract to make sure that it all coincided, that when his duties were listed on his contract were also duties that were required of him in the bylaws. I added some conflict of interest information, and the big one on that one was adding an annual filing requirement for the board members. Now, the best practice, I believe, is that each individual board member would file their own personal financial disclosure. It really, I think that is a conversation between an appointed political official, and I should say political, a public official, and the Missouri Ethics Commission. When we push the resolution, what we've been doing, the short form where we do it, what it really is that we have to keep on top of the board to make sure that you're not voting on something that could be a conflict for you. That's assuming that we know all the ins and outs of all of your lives, all of your assets, your finances, interests, all of those things, which we just don't know. And quite frankly, we don't want to know. We want you to have, that's your personal information, and that's really between you and the Missouri Ethics Commission. That is why I added that criteria. I would say I haven't seen any other political subdivisions, governing body do it any other way. In fact, I've been in a couple of cities where they have gone straight to that each public official is doing their own form and is pulling out any sort of responsibility from the actual staff. And then the last is just general provisions. It's just throwing in there, what the board president has voting rights as a full board. Sometimes like a board president vote is gone. So we want to make sure that the board president knows that they can vote during full board meeting agenda items. And then it talks a little bit about your travel, about, hey, we want you to be involved. We want you to go to conferences and learn about library things. And we make sure that the library would pay for those. And then it reiterates what the amendment process looks like for this bylaws. So that's the highlights. That's in there, the summary.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very helpful.
It's a lot. It feels like a lot. There's just a few major differences, but for the most part, I've just kind of reorganized and reformatted.
Yeah, just to get things cleaned up.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was my goal.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Bob.
Um, I actually read through this also and, probably want to go to section 5, article 5, meetings, section 7, parliamentary authority.
Yes.
It's suggested, and I don't think we have this anymore, so this is new, I assume this is new language.
We actually do have it in our board.
I mean, the
bylaws.
small board language.
Not the small board language.
Okay.
I added that flair, yes.
I wanted to go to that, in Robert's Rules of Order. And let me just say, I'm not necessarily a proponent of Robert's Rules of Order. The other political subdivisions I've been a part of had their own rules, and I thought that was a better way to deal with it. But regardless, under the small board language in Robert's Rules of Order, technically, this is one of my problems with Robert's Rules of Order. Allegedly, we're supposed to stand as we're addressing our fellow colleagues. Of course, who does that really? Except legislative bodies do, but they have their own rules. Regardless, if we adopt this small board language, we don't have to second motions. And I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that somebody should offer a motion, but there ought to be a second to that. And that's sort of, I know we're not voting tonight, but I'm just telling you that's part of what the small board language addresses. It does allow board members to speak several times. I agree with that. Says votes can be taken initially by show of hands. I again prefer to have a verbal response, not a show of hands. And that says if a proposal is perfectly clear to everyone, it may be voted on even though no formal motion has been made. I don't know how we know if it's perfectly clear to 12 people. So, and the other two items in here. Yep. So there are some, and I mean, I don't favor the inclusion of the term small board as it's defined in Robert's Rules of Order. So in 30 days, I'm just suggesting you look at Robert's Rules of Order, what small board means. And I mentioned 2 or 3 things. So I had that. On Article 6, which has to do with committees, standing committees. I just want my colleagues to understand that this now says that committees will be comprised of no more than 3 members. With 1 representative from each county. I don't necessarily oppose that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but it is a change. So it limits the committees to no more than 3 members. On the ad hoc committees, it says that these committees may also include staff and public representative, which is fine. My question is, do they have a vote on ad hoc committees? Yeah, if anybody has a question, I'm going through this. I don't mind.
Given that the committees are recommending or, making a recommendation, not actually authorizing it, I could see scenarios where you could have an expert casting a vote if needed. So let's take, for example, we're going to examine one of the options for headquarters that we need to engage an engineer or Aaron Gordon from our facilities department, and we want him to be a permanent member or a member of the ad hoc committee. I think it makes sense to ask them for their opinion and a vote if needed. But that's just the thought and why we would do that. Do you have anything to add there?
First, I apologize. I completely skipped over the committees because there are some bigger changes with that, with the terms and whatnot. No, and Aaron and I talked a little bit about this earlier, that you could have a staff member or an expert come on and be part of the committee, be voting. But really, when you create the ad hoc committee, you would outline those sorts of those duties and voting requirements when you create that committee. And this, ad hoc would be something that's should be a short term, for a specific project. And so you may want to, or you may say, hey, we're going to have experts come for discussion, but they have no voting power. I mean, the board can do whatever they choose to when they create these types of committees. But I could see the concern, you have someone voting for a recommendation that's not on the board itself. So I could see that, but there may be times where that would be beneficial.
Then if I could address the three-person committee, the idea there is to kind of mirror the structure of the full board, right? We have a representative one from each county. And three is obviously an odd number, but I think it's a good way to structure it because it's the way this is structured and the way our committees. So you would have equal representation from each of the three counties. Now, if you were to up that number to six, where I see it, it could be likely where maybe we'd be placing additional burden on people to serve on more than one committee. Certainly, it's up to the board. I think it's best, we just settled on three to make it easy.
Yeah, I'm just bringing these things up. I relate, that committee is, that three is fine, with me. I certainly have problems with some of the small board requirements.
I'll address.
And then, let me just, I thought I had. I don't, this is the board shall adopt a succession plan. I understand that's for the CEO. And maybe we should, that's fine. And I'm just, the other question is, and Sarah's mentioned it, is right now we do not file personal financial interest statements with the Missouri Ethics Commission. I certainly know as an elected official who's taking contributions for an election, I get all that. That needs to be published. People need to know, the public needs to know who's financing these candidates, but we don't stand for election. And I guess all I'm saying is, I don't know how many reports I file for everything I do anyway. I just don't know if I want one more thing. I just want to put out to the board that when we do this in 30 days, that is not in there. It's something we will be required to do with the Ethics Commission that we don't do now. That's really, I just want to make, all my comments are based on the idea that there's some things in here and you might want to look at them over the next month.
Trustee, I can speak a little bit. I mean, there's different requirements for elected officials. There's all the campaign contributions, the 30-day notice, 60-day, like all of those items we would not do. Just the annual filing of your personal financial disclosure. Like I have to file one every year. Jeremy would have to file one every year. I think Aaron does as well, and I think maybe Diana does. Susan, yeah, I mean, we all have to do one because you have to make sure, the idea is that we are not, we don't have any interest in any contracts or agreements or vendors of that nature. We're saying we don't have any business to disclose, and that would be the idea for the individual board members as well. But like all of the other candidate type forms, obviously since you're appointed, those forms would obviously not be required. So it'd just be one form, and it's online. I mean, it's click, click, click.
You're saying that's your interpretation, or is that actually what the Ethics Commission does? They'll limit this to one annual report?
Correct.
Yeah.
It is just one annual.
If I could throw out, and I'm sure, Bob, when you were elected, you probably did this one, but amongst all of the forms we do, it's hard to keep track of which forms we do, but I agree that this sounds like a good idea. I was sort of surprised that we're not required to do it. It just is an extra layer of separation between us as board members and requiring staff to keep track of this. There's that our financial interests. If we were going to do a contract with a company that one of us had a financial stake in, that should be disclosed, and this is just one more layer of insurance that happens. It's kind of a pain to do the form. I did it for the 10 years that I've served as an elected, but it's not, I also don't have a lot of investments to worry about. So, it's a hassle to do, but it's necessary because it keeps us, if nothing else, thinking about where do I have potential conflicts. Maybe I've invested in something and I just really wasn't even thinking about that being a potential conflict. But if it's something that the library also invests in, we need to be aware of that so we can recuse ourselves or vote in certain cases. To me, it's
Why don't we bring an example of the form next time for people to look at, so they can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If there's a physical form you can do, I do it online just because it's
Yeah.
easier for me.
it's not difficult. You're gonna name yourself and your family members in particular.
That's
Where you work, where you don't, so it's very, very basic. You're not getting into a full,
Right.
very simple, very basic.
it's not hard, but I think, yes, we're not elected, but we are appointed to oversee, and we have a fiduciary responsibility that an elected person has given to us to do. It's different than when I served on the planning commission. That was different. We didn't fill out that form because we were only ever a recommending body. We had no official power over money. But in this case, we have power over money, and I think that's an important thing for us to do. But as we move forward, I hope you look at it kind of in that line. Do I look forward to doing them? No, but I think.
I was thinking that we could have like we could have a little meeting before the meeting and go to the computer lab and we all just do it together.
There you go. I did mine online.
Yeah, so if someone needs.
Teresa,
So Trustee Whitehall has a question.
yes,
Don't we already do this for the auditors?
yes,
Yeah.
Not this.
yes, we do.
Not as detailed. No, we just say we don't have a conflict and we want. This is a little bit more than that.
That was
I
it.
think it would be helpful for people to actually see what we're talking about. It
Right.
sounds daunting, what we described, but I think, having filled them out for the majority of my career, it's not too intrusive and, takes just a matter of minutes. So next time around, we'll share that with you.
Yeah, all I was doing was just, there were issues that I thought need to be addressed and the other 11 members of the board can look at it and consider all they want to. And since I don't have a job and I don't have an ownership of any company that over 10%, I don't really care about this. It's just that I have filled out for years and years and years as an elected person. And I get those conflicts because people are contributing to your campaign and there's, but regardless, that's all I was doing was saying, we have 30 days. And I do think you all ought to look at Robert's rules of order in terms of small board consideration.
Which one?
The bottom line for me on that is that it's required. It's not like we have a choice. I think for years we've had the privilege of having the library do kind of a blanket statement, but I don't think that's in the best interest of the taxpayer or of the library. So I would support this change, even though it's part of it comes part and parcel with this.
Yeah, so Jeremy, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just gonna point out, there's really just one question on the form. It sort of takes longer to format than it takes to actually fill it out, but they want to know if you've had any business dealings with the library over $500, not including reimbursements, but like actually we paid you to do work. That's one question. And then the other question is, as Bob said, do you have 10% ownership interest in any company? So like I said, the form will take longer to fill out just from a procedural standpoint. Where do you live? Names of your children, that sort of thing, than an actual, multi-layered document.
But it should auto-populate every year, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, it will.
So like, once you do it once, then it's
Right.
like.
Right. So next meeting, we'll bring a sample.
Yep.
So everybody can see and we'll go through it and
You might just email out to the board members the link to that form. They can look at it. I mean, it's just a quick thing online, so they can take a peek at it.
yeah, it'd be the easiest thing to do. So,
We'll get that out to you then.
okay, great. Thanks, Marcy. All right.
So I guess I just want to follow up that, these edits are out there, the summary's out there. The earliest we can take a vote on this would be at the next board meeting. So, if there's question, if we want to get this deeper discussion, once the full board has the opportunity to really dive into this, and we can hash out any sticking points at the next meeting and take a vote on it, if that's the will.
Let me ask you, so
Yes.
if we want an amendment to some of these, do we talk to you about drafting amendments or
I can help draft amendments, but I think for this particular instance, since this is the draft that we're publishing out for notice. If we would actually take a amendment to, that we want to vote on, we'll actually do a motion to amend. And do the full shebang of motion second and have the full board vote on amendments.
No, I mean, who's actually gonna write an amendment? Like if I'm going into the small boards in particular.
It would just be a motion to strike the language, yada, yada.
Well, I get all that. So
I can do
what am I amending? Let me ask you this. So I know what it is in this, but it's page 158 in this little book. Now, that's my point. Which copy of Robert's Rules of Order am I going to draft an amendment to?
I'm talking the bylaws, if you don't like the small board language, we can strike that from.
Well, some of it's fine. Okay, but it's got, I don't know, what, 10 or 12 items in here when you look at it. All I'm saying is that some are not a problem, but I don't know how you deal with perfectly clear to everyone. I really don't know how you do that. Motions do not need a second. I think I question that. So.
Yep, and so, like, it's the way this is written, so the board shall use Robert's rules as guidance. Because really, as a full board, you police yourself. We use Robert rules as a guideline on how to do appropriate business. If we want it, it's kind of how we're doing now. We kind of follow some stuff to a T, we kind of be a little bit wishy-washy, some other things, but and as it is now, it's guidance. And so if the small board language in the current bylaws, Bob, if you don't like that, we can strike that from that and we can take a vote and do that at the next meeting.
Well, it's not all of them I disagree with. So.
And that's why the current bylaws and this bylaw say guidance. Like, we're just using as guidance. It's not, we're not, black and white to the T of the letter. We are just using as guidance on how to run this meeting.
It says the procedures for small boards will be adhered to.
Right, so that language is what I added. And if we don't like that language, we can strike it out in the next meeting.
Well, my point is that I think it'll be done in writing. I mean, the motion should be in writing.
Right. Yes.
So.
I can write that motion if you want.
That's what.
I can write it for you to read.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. That's what I'm used to. You have legislative research people and that's what they do for their living, it's their livelihood. So. All right, you answer that
I'm
question.
happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
I can do that for any of the board members.
Yeah,
if
that's
they
good.
want.
Yeah. That is all I have.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Fundraising and development. So Diana? Oh, Arson.
Right.
Okay.
Diana, I feel like you full credit to. She shares information that you all need to know, so I can share it with you.
Okay.
She has called my attention on the back of your monthly bulletin. You will see a couple paragraphs on the MGC microfilm reader replacement project. I won't read to you all the details of that, but just wanted to highlight that the library has received a grant for $18,581 for this project. And that is forthcoming, and you can read about the details of that there. I also just wanted to note that I received this in the mail the other day. You may have received yours also. It's the annual for the holidays fundraising solicitation by mail for those who would like to consider making a contribution to the library or even making that an annual gift. And right now we have an opportunity that all grants will be matched up to $10,000. So if you're giving, your gift will be doubled up to that amount. So that's a wonderful opportunity for the library and foundation fundraising to take advantage of. I just want to call that for your attention and encourage us all to be thinking about the library as we consider our end of year giving. Did I say everything?
Thank you, Marcy. Got my letter today.
Good.
So, is there anything to report from the technology committee? Lori?
Sorry, no, we did not meet this month. I don't know, Brian, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Thank you, Laurie.
Okay. All right, thank you. Finance and audit. Okay, meeting. All right, so thank you, everyone. We'll move on to financial reports and so Jeremy,
Good evening.
Hey,
good evening.
The next slide, please. The financial statements are all loaded for you on board docs, but we've got a summary document we prepared. We'll go over this just briefly as you know, our time is getting away from us here. The library has collected 1.1 million in revenue so far in the current fiscal year, compared to last year at 1.6 million, as we discussed last month. That difference is a replacement tax difference that we received last year, but we have not yet received this year from Jackson and Platte County. Going on to the next page. This is looking at cash flow for the last 4 fiscal years. The purple line is actual cash flow for the current fiscal year, and then the yellow line is our projection. You'll see that cash and short-term investment at the end of October was just over $443,000. The library has a line of credit, and we have drawn $4 million on that line of credit through the end of October. The line of credit that was authorized was $8 million. We believe that that'll be sufficient to get us to our first significant tax distribution of the new tax year, which should occur the first part of December. Moving on to the next slide, looking at the general fund. The general fund has collected just over $2 million and has expenditures of $26.2 million, including transfers out. We're at 126% of the early projected budget due to the increase of $4 million being transferred from the general fund to the capital fund, which wasn't a part of the original budget. Moving on to the next slide, the capital project fund doesn't have a lot of activity to report. The revenues include that transfer that I mentioned, and we've just had some expenditures on the cleanup side at the end of the capital plan that just ended. And the last slide that I have for you is on the health insurance fund. The fund has collected $1.2 million year to date, about 26% of the budgeted revenues, and has expenditures just under $998,000, about 19% of our budgeted expenditures. And for the current fiscal year, we have an operating surplus of $242,000. That is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you want.
Any questions? Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Let's move on to new business. Loggers annual meeting report. Michelle, would you have anything to report?
Hold on, let me grab my booklet. Was a great I mean, not a whole bunch really to report. I mean, it's a fantastic system. I mean, we contribute. Is Jennifer there?
Yes.
Okay. She may have something to add too. You know, I know we contributed about the maximum level for our employees. I do know that they said there had been a little bit of a strain. I mean, the system's extremely solvent. There had been a little bit of a strain and a lot of retirements. And I'd asked if some of those, you know, if the majority of those were law enforcement, because I know there's been a huge, you know, increase in law enforcement retirements. And they said it wasn't all law enforcement. It seemed to be kind of a system-wide, if people could retire, they were retiring. So that was good. They have a new CEO, seems to be doing a fantastic job. And they're working on their next, kind of their vision for the system. Let's see, working on customer service plans, sustainability, technology, and growth. Last year, the annual benefits paid last year was $492 million. And they have assets under their management of 10.6 billion. So it's pretty large and fantastic system. Always nice to go down there and
Oh, yeah.
hear very positive things. So I don't know what else Jennifer has to add.
I would just remind everyone that that amount of money that is paid out to beneficiaries, retirees, more than 90% of that stays in the state of Missouri. So that money is being spent in our communities, being spent on property tax and sales tax and all the things that and businesses that uplift our communities. So it's having an avenue for people to have a dignified exit from the workplace is beneficial to all of us. And also, Michelle mentioned that the system does have a new CEO. The system also does have a new CIO, a chief investment officer. So they are taking this opportunity to do what Michelle is talking about, coming up with they've been working on the strategic plan and what the future will look like for loggers. And part of that, I'm on the legislative advisory committee for loggers. And so part of what they'll be doing in this upcoming session is doing a little bit of what we're doing here with the board bylaws, some cleanup work in the statutes about how the loggers board is formed and voted on. Nothing super material. There may be like one change in there, but most of it is about modernization. If you go into some old statutes of how things are set up, like a pension system that was set up in the late 60s, there are some things in there that need to be modernized with how things work, like voting for delegates and the makeup of a board and things like that. So when we have loggers legislative advocacy day, we will be going down to talk to some members of the state legislature about helping modernize the board setup and the voting setup and things like that.
Right. Thank you for that, because I completely forgot about that, because that was a huge thing. Was right now there's no representative for retirees on that board. So that's a huge thing that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. And so that's one of the changes that they're looking at making. So pretty innocuous asks in terms of getting statutes, new legislation passed to adjust these statutes to modernize those things. And also, like Michelle said, to get a retiree representative on the board, which we all think is an important thing to have happen. So it was a good meeting overall.
Well, thank you, Michelle and Jennifer, for giving us an update on that. It's very, very informative. Appreciate that. I skipped over item 9, which is unfinished business. And so I must go back and say that there is no unfinished business before we can move on. So thank you. The next portion is I'm going to ask for a motion to enter closed session.
I move that we enter into closed session.
Okay, pursuant to section 610.021, subsection 1 RSMO, for the purpose of confidential communications between this body and its attorney.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded.
Trustee Virgo,
Aye.
trustee Gray, trustee Johnson,
Aye.
trustee Lazio,
Yes.
trustee Lemunion,
Aye.
trustee Pandolfi,
Aye.
trustee Weezy,
Aye.
trustee Wilson,